Welcome to the June JB Media Digital Drop-In. This is Sarah Benoit, and I am the lead instructor of the JB Media Institute. I'm really excited to have everybody on this call today because we're going to be talking about how PR and social media work together to tell your story and grow your following. And one of the things that I've really been digging into over the last couple of months is this idea that public relations and social media are becoming more linked and two strategies that are really kind of working together to push information out there about different brands. And I think there's a lot of different ways that this plays out in the real world. And so that's what I want to talk about today. A couple of quick housekeeping things. First of all, just so everybody knows, in case you haven't been on one of our digital drop-ins before, you are muted as a webinar participant, so you can hear me, but I can't hear you. But you do have access to the chat box, so I will be watching that as we go through today's entire presentation, and I'm extremely glad to answer any questions that come up, especially since it's just me today, so we have plenty of time to talk about your particular questions or issues or obstacles or ideas even. If you have thoughts or ideas you want to contribute, please feel free to chat them in. The second thing I want to just mention is that all of you will get a recording of this webinar, so don't worry about trying to remember everything that I say today or everything that I share. You'll get a copy of this recording, and you'll also get a copy of the PDF that I am going to share with you today. So you'll be able to engage with this content down the road and learn more in the future. And finally, just for those of you who are not as familiar with me, again, my name is Sarah, and I'm the lead instructor of the JB Media Institute. And the JB Media Institute is an online educational community where we teach social media, search engine optimization, public relations, online advertising, and digital marketing strategy. So, like I said, what we really focus on is how all of these different digital marketing strategies come together to help companies and organizations build a really clear strategic plan for their online presence. And one of the things I just wanted to lay as groundwork before we have this conversation is really what we see in the industry is that all of these different things that you do to promote yourself online, they're all coming together and becoming more and more like each other. So for instance, social media plays a role in public relations. Public relations plays a role for search engine optimization. Search engine optimization plays a role in content marketing. All of those different things. So what's interesting to me is that a lot of the strategies that used to be siloed into their own kind of wheelhouse. So a lot of times you had search engine people doing work, you had social media people doing work, you had public relations people doing work, you had sales people doing work. Now all of these things have to come together and work together to build up your brand's presence online and to really drive sales and leads and different things like that. So that's why I think this conversation is so fascinating. I think we're going to continue to have even more conversations about how these strategies that we've always seen as separate are now becoming strategies that have to happen together in order to really gain success. So on that note, we're going to go ahead and get started in talking about how PR and social media are coming together. So I see in the chat that we are still having just a few issues with people maybe getting kicked off of the broadcast. So I'm so sorry about that. Please feel free, if you are having that issue, to let Jenna and I know a couple of different things. What device are you using? What browser are you using, if you're using a browser? And a little bit more about specifically what's happening, whether or not you're getting kicked off of, essentially the video, getting kicked off of the audio, getting kicked off of both. That'll allow us to try to figure out what is going on. So, to continue, like I said, into this conversation about social media and public relations, I think one of the key things that we all want to think about when it comes to these two things coming together is that social media is really creating a way for you to position your brand to win and to get attention from journalists, from media, from influencers, from bloggers, from the people that your audiences trust and pay attention to. So really that's why I think these two strategies are now have started to become kind of one strategy. So essentially, I think there's a few different things we want to think about when it comes to positioning. First of all, social media is going to make it easier for you to be in the spotlight because through social media, you're able to broadcast a lot about your brand, a lot about your company, your products, your services, or your organization and its programs and its mission. So social media has become a really important tool for kind of, putting the brand out there into the light so that everybody can see it. Social media also allows you to be accessible and available, and we're going to talk about that more, but really being accessible to people, letting them ask questions, letting them comment on what they think about what you're doing, all of that kind of information is really important. I think social media gives you a way to really state your purpose with clarity. So if you really want to position yourself well as an expert, as a thought leader, as a product or service that is really loved by the public or really valuable or beneficial, I think you have to really kind of make sure that you are really stating that purpose with total simplicity and straightforwardness. Social media helps with this because it does require sometimes that you shorten things in different ways. And so when you kind of shorten things and try to get to the point, I think a lot of times that makes your purpose clear. I think to position yourself well, you are going to find from a public relations standpoint, social media helps you get to know your audiences better and to really understand them on a deeper level. So what it comes down to at the end of the day is your PR is going to be stronger when you're able to meet people's needs, answer their questions, solve their problems, fulfill their desires, meet their expectations. When you're able to do all of that, your PR, your stories are much more memorable, much more shareable. They have a bigger impact. And so, again, when it comes to positioning yourself, I think utilizing social media as a listening tool so that you understand what people are really looking for can be incredibly valuable. And, a lot of times I think when you're getting ready to pitch a story to a media outlet, to a paper, to a TV, to a radio station, essentially, if you have done some listening and engagement with your audiences on social media, a lot of times you can have an idea of how to pitch the story in a stronger way and what people are really finding strong about the story, what's really sticking with them, what's really motivating them or moving them from an emotional place. And again, I know I can see a couple people are still having trouble calling in. Hopefully, like I said, thank you, Jenna, for answering some of those questions. And hopefully we'll figure out why we have just like 2 or 3 people that are struggling here. But thank you all for chatting in and letting us know that you're having an issue. So again, I want to talk about social media and PR and how they come together and what it is that I think they can do when you bring those strategies kind of in alignment. So first of all, they can increase your brand awareness. This is an obvious one. So, a lot of times when it comes to brand awareness, the purpose of your public relations is really to hopefully get more people to know about your products and services and to know about your brand. And social media is really doing that same thing. It's helping you build a following, and it's making it easier for fans to share information, whether that's a new product that you're launching, whether it's a new service offering, whether it's a sale or a discount, whether it's a case study or a testimonial or some type of campaign that you're running to promote certain things. It makes everything really shareable, and it allows your current fans to really connect in with their circle of people and to essentially, just instantly kind of tell them about it. And essentially, because so much social media is happening on mobile devices, it really does make it just incredibly accessible and easy for them to do so. So, that's where I think using these two things together can be very valuable. Understanding that anything you're doing from a PR standpoint can be translated into a social media campaign as well is very important. And when you create even a small, loyal, active group of followers on social media, that can really help your stories appear more important, more beneficial, more valuable when you're pitching the media. So again, some of us are starting with a small, loyal group, but the truth is, if we can get them activated and get them to really share our information with the other people that they know who might need our products or services, essentially, I think that, it makes a huge difference. Sometimes in the beginning, it feels like, you have to be patient, right? It's a long game to build this type of relationship with your followers. But eventually that relationship really is what leads you to the media attention. Again, because I think a lot of different media outlets, different journalists are paying attention to what's happening in the public. Also, one of the things that I think social media helps PR with is really identifying the right audiences. So if you're already running social media accounts and you have even a small loyal group of fans and you really understand and listen to them and pay attention to who they are, that's going to allow you to identify what types of PR outreach are the most valuable, right? So if I understand the demographics, the interests, the behaviors of the people who love what I do on social media, I can really start to identify what publications, what channels, what stations I want to reach out to because they cater to people that are very similar. Shonali Burke, who's an expert in social PR, she says what we need to do is focus our attention on multiple audiences, not just that one media audience. Think about how your product or service is of value to your end user and your community, and look at it from that point of view, which is what good PR should always be about. Use social technology to reach them, and that's where the magic starts to happen. So like I said, it's really about understanding. In the social media world, we always talk about how you don't have one audience. You have a number of different audiences, right? So you have different niches that you're reaching out to. You have some people that are on social media that have just heard about you. They're a new fan or a new follower. They're just coming into contact with your brand. On social media, you probably also have people that are longtime fans, longtime customers, repeat customers. They're people who already believe in what you do and they love what you do. So in essence, we want to start thinking about those different groups of people when it comes to public relations as well. A lot of the different channels that you reach out to, the different media outlets that you reach out to, they are also now catering to those niches, catering to these different groups that they connect with. I think in Asheville, it's kind of an interesting example because in Asheville, we have a very sort of diverse spectrum of people in the city when it comes to political beliefs, when it comes to values. Asheville, compared to many of our surrounding cities and towns, we have a lot of different ways of thinking, a lot of different belief systems that are represented by our population. So even if you're a major newspaper or a major TV or radio station in Asheville, you have these sort of microgroups within the larger audience that you're trying to reach, and you're going to be choosing stories that resonate with these different groups so that you have content that connects with each of these different groups. You're not really thinking of them as just one giant audience and trying to feed them all the same thing. There are some things that would apply to everybody. For instance, weather reports, right? So weather reports apply to everybody who live here, regardless of our personal beliefs. But there's other stories that are really going to play better with different audiences. And so social media has really taught us the truth in that, how important it is to connect in with what people care about. And so PR is now kind of shifting to do that same thing. Lastly, I think what PR and social media both are really trying to accomplish for most brands is building community. So really figuring out how to start valuable and relevant conversations online, because conversation is kind of the ultimate goal that you can accomplish when it comes to both social media and PR. So people talking back and forth about your brand, talking back and forth about your products and services, building a community of people that will continue to pay attention to what your company or organization is doing. That's sort of everybody's ultimate goal with these types of strategies. And so I think that's, again, why we see social media and public relations coming together more frequently. And so a couple things that I want to suggest around this that can be really valuable. When it comes to social media having a public relations kind of purpose, I think there's some unique things that you can do. One is Facebook groups. So there are a lot of different companies and organizations now that are creating Facebook groups around specific niche topics or issues or products even. And those Facebook groups become a way not just to organize potential customers or existing customers, but they also become a way to really put out to the public that you are focusing on this particular topic or issue, and you have a group of people that are focused specifically on that, and your brand is kind of leading that conversation. So this is just kind of a plug for why it's a good idea to consider using Facebook groups and to keep those groups public so that people in the media, editors, journalists, reporters can see them, and to be really clear about what the group is centered and focused around. Another kind of example of how to use social media to build community is doing kind of live tweeting events. So I know on Facebook and Instagram we have live streaming, obviously, that makes it easy to kind of have these events where people engage with your content. On Twitter, though, we've always had something called live tweeting, which means I let people know when a representative of my brand is going to be on Twitter, available to answer questions, tweet important information. A lot of times we might be tweeting links over to something that's happening on the website, but it encourages people to show up and get involved. This can be done with, actual events that are happening on the ground, but it can also be done around anything from specific holidays, specific television events, all of that kind of stuff. A good example of this is when we had the elections. A lot of times for every election debate, there was a huge live tweet event that happened where a lot of different people were engaging and having conversations and talking. Any brand can kind of create that experience if they have a following that they can tap into and give people that chance to kind of live interact as part of the community. And then I think any time that a brand can work on branded hashtags around their different stories, their different products, their different services, their different mission and vision kind of statements, branded hashtags can be a great way to get the attention of people from different media outlets. So think about how these types of social media tools can help you become truly active within a community, and therefore, again, going back to our first kind of slide, help your brand step into the spotlight around certain issues. And I think different things like this, groups and live tweets, branded hashtags, it can also help you really connect in with trends that are, happening within your industry, within your region, any of that stuff. So again, a lot of times when there's a big topic trending and your brand or organization is offering something really relevant, you can use some of these strategies, not just to engage your social media following, but to also show yourself kind of out into the community as active, participating, caring, connected, and invested. And when you do that, you'll potentially get the attention of media and other people. So before I go into talking about the experts and what the experts say, I wanted to just open up for any questions or thoughts here. So if you have any ideas or things that you'd like to contribute or things that you have questions about, let me know. I know it takes a minute to type in, so feel free. Yeah, and Jacqueline, I see your question. So can you say a brief word about tips or ideas for how to create branded hashtags. So yeah, absolutely, I can do that. I think there's a couple different things that you can keep in mind. First of all, I always do hashtag research before I decide on an absolute branded hashtag, because you just never know if there's a brand out there that's doing something similar, that has a similar name, that has a similar campaign going on. And we just want to make sure that if somebody else is using a hashtag that's exactly the one that we have in mind, or is using a hashtag very similar, that, we're not going to kind of step on each other's toes. I think that's really important because, again, especially with smaller businesses, like, you just never know. There could be somebody 10 states away already using a hashtag that you think is really original. So I always do that hashtag research. You can research directly on Twitter, just in their search bar. You can research directly on Instagram in their search bar as well. But there's also a number of other sites out there. There's one called hashtagify.me, and it's spelled exactly how it sounds. So hashtagify, IFY at the end. If you just Google that, it would come up. There's also one called hashtags.org, and all of them offer some sort of search feature, and they pull in data from Instagram and Twitter. I'm a big fan of researching it right on Instagram and Twitter, though, to see, especially if I'm using those social platforms, I want to see what's being used on that particular platform. And thank you, Jenna, for sharing the link. I really appreciate it. The other suggestion I would make is, keep it short. Some longer hashtags can work, I think, especially if they're funny and easy to remember. But a lot of times when you're doing a branded hashtag, if it can be something simple and short and easy to remember, that's really key. Because if we want people to repeat it, we want them to really have it kind of in their mind. If it's too long, then it doesn't really stick. However, like I said, the exception to that rule in my mind is when it's funny. If it's a longer hashtag and it's really funny, then sometimes it'll still stick with people because of that. And the third thing I would say just around branded hashtags is I want to say be clear, but to sort of expand upon what I mean by that. Usually with a branded hashtag, there's some type of a message that you're focused in on. And hold on one second. Yeah, it's coming through there. If you could mute that. Thank you. So essentially, you want to make sure that your hashtags are kind of letting people know really what the voice of the brand is, or really what the purpose of the brand is. So a lot of times right now I'm working with a nonprofit, and we've been working on branded hashtags. And, it's really key for us that when people engage with our brand, that they feel activated, they feel inspired. So a lot of times when we're coming up with the branded hashtags, we're trying to reflect that feeling, if that makes sense. I think sometimes hashtags can be a little boring if they're branded, if you're not careful. I also think that hashtags can, sometimes if they don't have just like clear meaning, then people don't use them as much. Because hashtags really are meant to reflect something specific. So when you can have clear kind of meaning in the branded hashtag that you create, I think that's helpful, and it just increases the amount of engagement that you get from that. So again, great question. Thank you so much for that. And let me know if there's anything else that you want to know about branded hashtags. So the next part of what I wanted to share with everybody is basically about an event that I attended here in Asheville called the WNC Press Pass. And the reason I wanted to share this information is because what I'm talking to you about today isn't just stuff that I believe because I've been doing the work. It's because I've really talked to journalists and reporters. And so this event that was held here was a really amazing event, sold out event. Was orchestrated by women entrepreneurs of WNC and Emily Breedlove. And essentially, she brought in people who work for our top media in the area. Citizen Times, Carolina Public Press, Mountain Express, ABC WLOS Channel 13, and Blue Ridge Public Radio, or WCQS. And so essentially we had editors/reporters come in from each one of these channels, and they talked to us about the relationship between social media and public relations. And I just found this event to be so powerful. It really helped me just kind of hear straight from the people that we are pitching on a regular basis all around Asheville, what it is that we can do for them, how we can make our pitches stronger. And so I wanted to go ahead and just give you my top takeaways or highlights from this event, because again, this came directly from the people who are in the media, from radio, from TV, from print publications, and from online publications. So this really was kind of the top takeaways or highlights that I gained, not just from attending the event, but I also videoed a bunch of the event and then re-watched it to really dig into what their suggestions were. And so I wanted to go ahead and share kind of my top 5 kind of takeaways from their advice and thoughts. So the first thing that I really took away was everything happens in real time. So when it comes to PR and social media, what we've got is this world where stories are happening 24/7. The 24-hour news cycle changed everything in journalism. I think most journalists would agree with that. But social media is making that cycle move even faster because it facilitates so much citizen journalism. So people are able to report on what's happening faster sometimes than the actual media outlets are. And so that is just kind of speeding up the process. And journalists and reporters and influencers and bloggers who are involved in telling the stories of different industries and regions and brands, they're finding and sharing stories from anywhere at any time. So because a lot of this is happening on social media and being communicated so quickly, it's also going over mobile devices. And so really, one of the editors of the Asheville Citizen Times basically talked about how she's getting story ideas 24/7 just by, participating in social media, just by seeing what the public is talking about. So I think that's a key thing to remember. Everything is happening in real time. A lot of times in PR, we spend a lot of time crafting the story and pitching the story. And sometimes we even land potential coverage and then we get bumped for something that's happening in real time that's trending higher and is more important. And that's just the name of the game. And so you want to be comfortable with that as you continue to work on your own public relations. It's kind of a long game where you're going to just continue being out there, putting yourself out there through different channels, and eventually hoping that you land the coverage that you want. The second takeaway that I thought was really powerful was every different media outlet has their own preferred channel. So whether it's a print publication, whether it's a TV station, a radio station, a really, really popular blog for an influencer or somebody in the community that everybody knows, all of these different types of media outlets now, they have their own preferred social media channels and tools. So from a PR perspective, I often talk to students about putting together, their sort of dream list, right? So if they were going to get coverage by any media, what would that media be? And why? Why do they want that coverage? Who do they think they're going to connect with if they get that coverage? And I really feel like once you kind of have that dream list of, channels that you hope are going to see your story and then share your story, tell your story in a bigger way, you want to go and investigate each media channel or outlet and find out what are their preferred social media channels. A lot of the editors and journalists I spoke to, Facebook and Twitter are the two big ones. For news and for local happenings and just for, information about who are the experts, the thought leaders in their community around different topics. So Facebook and Twitter are, I think, really big when it comes to just journalism in general. I do think other sites have value, and so it's important to go ahead and, like I said, do this investigation. Make a spreadsheet. Make a list to see, here are all the media outlets that I want to try to contact or connect with. Here are all their social media links. And the other thing that I thought was really amazing is that a lot of these leaders in their organizations, in their media outlets, basically talked about how stories are discovered everywhere. So posting on your timeline is great, but again, using things like Facebook Live, Facebook groups, doing different things to bring people together in the community are great ways to be standing out from your competition. So it's not just about posting things to your timeline or tweeting, right? It's about being out there and actually engaging as a brand. So retweeting and sharing and commenting on things, starting a Facebook group around an issue or a topic, doing Facebook Live videos where you engage a bunch of people to talk about something that you feel is important and relates to what you're offering as a brand. So really think about how you can choose the channels that you're using for social media so that they do reach the PR and media people that you want to connect with, right? Sometimes I feel Twitter is almost solely for media outreach and PR. Sometimes it's not going to drive as many customers, but it is going to get you in front of different publications and channels that would be important. The third takeaway was video tells the story faster. So it was interesting that a lot of these editors and journalists talked to me about how they still receive press releases, and press releases still have a place, but a lot of times reading through content takes a lot more energy and effort. So when you are putting out press releases, I think it's a unique idea to consider doing videos that reinforce what your press release is about, right? So whether those videos are fun and, maybe a little less formal than a press release, but they reinforce the story pitch. Doing live streaming that reinforces the story pitch can be valuable. I think this is where, video spreads a lot faster. It engages more people, and so then it tends to be shared at a higher rate, especially if it's really resonating with folks. So think about that. And if your video starts to blow up and get a lot of attention, even if it's just in your local area, the media outlets are paying close attention to what the public is watching and reading and engaging and talking about. So video can be a great way to get more people to see what it is, see your message, see your story, and the more the public is really seeing the story and engaging with it, the more likely it is that the media is also becoming aware of that story. So consider how social media and especially video content can work together with something like a press release, a product launch, all of that kind of things that go into a PR campaign. Tack on that video and that social media kind of exposure and promotion as part of the PR campaign, and it can tend to make a big difference. The fourth takeaway was stories can be told in many, many ways. So all of the media outlets, again, for us here in Western North Carolina, which the ones that we talked to were the Asheville Citizen-Times, the Mountain Express, Blue Ridge Public Radio, Channel 13, WLOS, and Carolina Public Press, they all talked about how in the old days, when you were a media outlet, you would have stories that were going into your print publication or going on TV or going over the radio, and then you would just regurgitate those same stories into your website. And then a lot of times you would regurgitate those same stories into your social media. But most of them said that has really changed. So again, because we started with that idea that audiences are now not just one big audience, right? Audiences are niches. They're little groups of people that make up the larger group. Essentially what that means is now a lot of media outlets and channels are using different types of social media tools, website tools, and traditional tools to put out their stories. So there may be a way to get your story pitch accepted to be on the website, but it's not in print. Or we even heard the Mountain Express talk about how some things they put in print first, they don't put them online until later. And there's a reason for that, right? So think about that, especially when you're doing PR and you're talking to different types of editors and journalists and reporters. Find out from them, where will this story go? Will it just be on the website? Will it be on the website and then shared on Facebook? Will it be on the website, also broadcast over TV, and also on Facebook and also on Twitter? Or will it just be in print? Or will it just be covered on TV, but it won't be on the website? I think that's going to help you understand the value of your PR a lot, especially when you're really doing PR campaigns to try to get more attention to the brand and the stories that you tell. I also think that it helps you understand the value of the type of PR that you've landed. So all PR obviously has value, right? So you're getting in front of these audiences, which is awesome and exciting. But I think one of the other things that you can see is, if it goes onto Facebook or goes onto the website, you're going to be able to track it a lot better. You're going to be able to put actual value to that PR potentially. So, that makes it a little different than just getting into a print publication, right? If you are just covered for a minute on WLOS or another TV station, that's only going to give you a certain amount of exposure. But if it's also going to be talked about on Facebook in a longer way, so they're going to mention it on TV, but then there's going to be a deeper, more involved kind of commentary that happens on the website and on Facebook, that allows you again to kind of understand, all right, cool, we might see some traffic. We're going to be able to see how many people are commenting on that post that has to do with our brand and all of that stuff. So I just think understanding that each media outlet or each publication or station, they really have kind of these different ways that they're going to tell stories. Not every story gets everywhere in their online presence. So, different types of PR wins have different weight. But the cool thing is, the positive about this is that it gives you so many more opportunities for coverage. And so you might pitch a story and get an article that only ends up on a website. But later on, that same publication comes back to you and interviews you for something in print or asks you to come and be on the radio. So think of it as building this relationship with them, and that relationship can grow. And then finally, the last takeaway that I got from this event, that literally I heard from every single expert on the panel this day, regardless of whether or not they were in print or TV or radio, tracking and reporting is key. So basically what I heard from all the editors and journalists is they pay close attention to which stories perform the best. And that means which stories get the most engagement and reach. It means which stories drive the most website traffic, all of those kind of things. So they really pay attention to the digital tracking and reporting aspect of their current kind of content, right? So most publications or media outlets are putting out a ton of content, and they're learning which content is really the strongest by paying attention to the tracking and the measuring that they get on social media platforms and their website. And this is just really key. So I think this helps us when it comes to PR, because every channel wants to be the go-to source for its audiences, right? So every media outlet, every publication, every channel out there wants to be kind of the winner. It was an interesting thing where all of these editors and reporters and journalists talked in the panel about how they all share stories. A lot of times they cover similar things because they're important to their audiences, but they're also still in competition. And everybody wants to be the first one to break a story. So there's a healthy level of collaboration and competition happening in this world. And, I think the goal is, from a PR perspective, how can the story that you're pitching out to different media outlets, how can it help that media outlet really become and to continue to be, the go-to resource for its audiences? How can you make a reporter or journalist look amazing? How can you make them look awesome to their audiences? How can you help their content get the most reach and engagement? This really helps us, I think, to come up with better story pitches, to really think about the types of ideas that we want to present to the media. A lot of times, there's that question of, in PR, is it newsworthy? I think we've gone beyond that question, because now the question is more detailed, and is it newsworthy? Is it entertaining? Is it interesting to people? Is it going to get them excited? Is it going to hold their attention? Because everybody's got a short attention span online. So I really want you to think about this as you're considering what type of stories you would pitch to the media. Really consider that the goal here is not just to get your brand attention and to get your brand into the spotlight. It's so that there's a win-win between your brand and the media outlet, or your brand and the journalist, so that you all get in the spotlight, so that you all get attention, right? So it's a very kind of partnership oriented strategy to be in PR, because it can't be just about you. It really has to be about whether or not that media outlet or that journalist is going to benefit from the covering the story that you gave them. And at the end of the day, what you both actually need to care about most is whether or not the people on the other end got really excited about the story. And the tracking and reporting will show that. So that's just something that I think in PR can be really valuable. If you work for a larger brand, company, or organization, there might be some people on your team that are stronger at PR. They've got a little bit more extroverted personality. They can make a better connection with people personally. Those type of people, I think, are going to be important because they're going to create this relationship with the media outlets and with the reporters and journalists. So we've got about 10 minutes left. Again, I want to open up to any questions that you have about PR or social media. And I know we're kind of moving through a lot of different topics, but if there's something specific that you want to ask, please do not hold back. I always love answering questions while we have time today. The last piece of what I'm going to share with you are just some interesting kind of PR and social media examples from sort of the larger kind of corporate world, but I think they're interesting examples to dig into. And I will say these three things that I've been tracking out are really related to PR crisis management and how social media plays into that. So a lot of times when we talk about PR, we want to be positive. We want to think about telling our story and getting a lot of attention, having people fall in love with our brand. But PR can also really relate to, crisis management and reputation management. It can relate to how do you deal with the situation when something goes wrong, right? So again, if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt me during this time and I will definitely talk about them. But I wanted to just share these examples really quickly. First of all, we all know Facebook is having a PR crisis, right? So Facebook has had a long string of PR crises, actually. I wouldn't even say they're having one crisis. So at first it was, higher education studies that Facebook is making people more narcissistic and less connected. Then it was their live streaming platform. People were live streaming their violent crimes. Then it was, Cambridge Analytica. Then it was, so they're just kind of continuing down this pathway. Then after Cambridge Analytica, it was Facebook didn't deal with it fast enough. Mm-hmm. So they are just kind of going through a really harsh couple of years of a lot of criticism. And I think it's interesting, just because we're talking about social media, to start by looking at what they're doing. And I think there's a few key takeaways that come from paying attention to this. And I don't know if all of you have seen their commercials lately, but they're doing a big commercial campaign around how they messed up, right? So basically their commercial starts out with, at first everybody was making friends and everyone was happy. And then spam happened. And then data breaches happened. And we are responsible. And so we're trying to get back to the core of what matters. And what matters is human connection, right? So that's their whole sort of campaign right now. And I think it's just interesting that what we're finding is, one, Mark Zuckerberg is speaking regularly to people from his own account. So he's often saying to people, this is what's happening, let me update you. And as CEO, he's taking a big step forward. They are trying to really clearly share the steps that they are taking to deal with the problems or issues. So there's these regular announcements across all of Facebook's channels about how they're fixing some of the issues that have happened in the past. And then I think one of the key takeaways is respond quickly and be more transparent. So don't hold back when you have a crisis. Jump in and start dealing with it. And I see this question, please repeat regarding news content. Is it interesting? Is it noteworthy? Are the media outlets looking for? So actually what I was saying, and I don't know exactly what I said, honestly, you'll have to kind of look back at the recording. But what I was talking about is that we've gone from the question of, is it newsworthy, to is it entertaining? Is it valuable to people? Is it going to benefit them in some way, right? So I guess what I wanted to point out is that in PR, the question used to be, is what we're pitching newsworthy? And now the question is Is it all these different things? Because it might be newsworthy and it might end up, kind of considered daily news or weekly news, but it could also just be something that's entertaining. It could be something that's educational. It could be something that is just helpful to people. And that's something still that media outlets would share. It doesn't always have to be breaking news, right? They're looking for different types of content to push through their channels, basically 24/7. So we have all these new opportunities to potentially get our content out there. And so really understanding what is the purpose of the content, what is the value of the content, that's going to allow you to pitch it to the right channels and the right people at the right time. So does that answer your question? Just want to make sure that makes sense, that I'm repeating that in a way that helps. And I'll let you, awesome, great. So the next two examples I want to use here at the end are Wells Fargo and Uber. So again, if you haven't seen the advertising commercials for Wells Fargo recently, they're a bigger bank and they've had some major PR image issues recently. And so there are a few things that they are doing. Their campaign is basically about how in 2018 they're reestablishing themselves. And reestablishing the brand has a lot to do with earning back the trust of their customers, or reinventing their brand is kind of what they're doing this year. And so I think the first thing that we can take away from their PR sort of push is if you plan to reinvent your brand, you better have proof that the reinvention is real. So Wells Fargo started reinventing their brand and then had a bunch of other bad press coverage. Right. And so, basically this became a whole conversation of you're reinventing into nothing. And so that's a really big issue. If you're going to push a type of campaign out where you deal with your crises, if you're going to say something as strong as we're reinventing ourselves, you better mean it. Also, you have to be prepared that people will challenge you. So if you go to the Wells Fargo Facebook page right now, you will see that a lot of people are just pounding them, asking questions, pushing buttons, and really kind of speaking out. So people are going to challenge you. And then I think one of the things that Wells Fargo is doing well is they're responding to everybody, and making their customers feel seen and heard. So, I think even though it's hard, even though they're getting challenged, it's important to do that. And Doris, I see your question. I'll definitely add that right at the end. And the last example I wanted to give everybody about PR and social media coming together is Uber. And again, Uber is also doing an advertising campaign. So you'll see how social media and PR and advertising are all being used to deal with all of these PR crises that I'm mentioning. But Uber is doing their new campaign, Moving Forward. It's all about their new CEO and how he's been brought in to get rid of all their leadership that was a problem and to make their drivers and their riders their top focus. And I think there's key takeaways here too. Make changes in leadership if necessary. So if your leadership is part of your PR problem, make them go away. Get somebody else. Put somebody else in the spotlight. Enlist the help of your team. So one of the things Uber's doing for June is they're doing a campaign called #RideWithPride. They're featuring different members of their team that are in the LGBTQ community, and they're kind of refocusing their energy on something positive. But they're doing it instead of just having their PR team push it out. It's their own staff, their own employees pushing it out, which I think makes it more powerful and more authentic. And then make customer service top priority. So if you go to Uber's Facebook page right now, you will see the Facebook page is being utilized as a huge customer service tool. It's not just about marketing. It's not just about sales. It's about really helping people, answering their questions, giving them places to call if they're having a problem, helping them report stuff. If you go to Uber's page, you'll see they're telling people to private message them immediately about issues that need to be handled. So it's become a real customer service channel as well. And I see here, Doris, that your question is your Facebook Insights shows that the majority of your fans are online at 8 p.m. Should I post at 8 p.m. or before that? Is that true? And so, or should I post at 8 p.m. or before that time? So I think it's interesting to pay attention that, people are online later in the evenings. This is actually true for most Facebook business pages, I would say. The top times range from 6 to 9 p.m. I would say in general, you want to be able to listen to your audience and pay attention to them. So if you've never scheduled posts to go out later in the evening, then you should do that. And then compare those posts under insights and then posts. And see if you're getting more engagement and more comments and reach in there when you do that. That is really what's going to tell you whether or not it's worth it to schedule things that late at night. But I do think it's common for most business pages to see that people are mostly online in the evenings. But again, it's kind of takes testing to prove that posting later or scheduling your posts to go later are actually going to increase your engagement and reach. So hopefully that answers your question. Please feel free to let me know if you have any other qualifications you need on that. But we're right at 1 o'clock, so I want to go ahead and wrap up. You can see I've got some final comments in the presentation. Social media engagement and activities can prove the value of your story before media outlets pick it up. So use that social media to really engage with the community and move yourself into the spotlight. Public relations is now a combination of storytelling, customer service, communications, which involve conversations on social media, and brand authenticity. So keep that in mind. And social media can enhance your PR and make your storytelling more effective. Or if you're not transparent and honest, it can make it more difficult and stressful. So remember, when you involve people in your social media, you're inviting them to talk back to you and talk with you. And so if your PR is not really done from a place of authenticity, it can just create a world where people don't believe you and they will tell you that they don't believe you. So again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate the last few minutes that you gave me because I know we were having some technical problems. We started just a few minutes behind. But if there's any other questions, I'm glad to stay on the line for a few moments and answer them. Otherwise, be looking out for an email with this recording and with our presentation as well, ready for download by tomorrow morning. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day. I hope to see you at a future digital drop-in. Our next one will be July 11th. So mark your calendars and look for an email announcement about our topics for next month. Have a great week.